Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Community Conversations. My guest this week is Courtney Kearney of CKearney Consulting out of Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. I first met Courtney at SMPS's Southern Regional Conference in Oklahoma City. SagePresence was presenting at the event, and so was Courtney, and we had the opportunity to meet at a presenter dinner where I got to learn a little bit more about her work and her book, CRM or Die. In my conversation with her today, we dive into who she is, where she's from, and what inspired her to write her book. I hope you enjoy. Well, welcome, Courtney. Thank you so much for taking the time today to have a conversation. I know you're an active member of the SMPS community, both in your regional chapter, your local chapter, and on the national level as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say what a joy it was to meet you at SRC last January in Oklahoma City. We had a wonderful conversation around dinner at the presenters dinner, which was a lot of fun. And for those who haven't had the opportunity to meet you yet, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to your company that you're in now.
Absolutely. Yes, it was nice to meet you at that dinner as well, and a fun time to be in Oklahoma City. So my background, unlike a lot of people in AEC marketing, I didn't slip and trip and fall into this industry. I actually sought it out. My father was a project manager for a general contractor here in the DFW area in Texas. And I grew up going to the job site and loved the built community. So I knew that this was the place for me. So I went to Texas A&M University, and went there for engineering for 2.5 years and went, I cannot sit at a desk and do AutoCAD every day. So I took one of those career elective courses where it was like, what are you best suited for? And everything came back communications. So I switched to communications. My engineering team thought I was insane because I was a junior at this point, but I just knew I didn't want to do that day in and day out. So I graduated with a communications degree and went to work at a general contractor and got to marry my communication skills for the technical community. But I had started interning at a general contractor when I was 14. So luckily I got to see every department, all the way from, the pre-construction side to marketing. Now, granted, this was back in the marketing days when it was cut sheets in a wall of paper, and we pulled them. But it's still the same content, right? Just your method of binding or presenting it has changed over the years. But it was a great experience to get the full depth of what we do as marketers and how that has changed over the years. And like you said, I'm very active in SMPS. One of the things that is so interesting to kind of my backstory is that, again, AEC is in our family, and my aunt actually worked at this general contractor years before I did. And so some of her Excel spreadsheets, I would go to open them to find old, data for proposals, and there's her name. And I just loved that history. But she was on the very early days of SMPS and worked with Nancy Eshery on the communications committee. And so SMPS is not only in my blood, but it's in my family line, which is super fun.
I love that. I love that. And what, for you, when you finally started to come into the SMPS environment, what ultimately drew you to it? Was it the awareness of your family, or was there other connections and then the awareness discovered about the family line?
Yeah, great question. I had no idea that my aunt was involved in the organization until I actually was working with Nancy. And she was like, wait a minute, I have known of you for a very long time. So that was a super fun connection to discover, and not even for my aunt. But as far as SMPS goes, I was introduced to it as a marketing coordinator because my firm, that's just something that they invested in. So I would go to education events and programs just to attend. And then as I got further into my career, I wanted to get involved. So back then there was the Dallas chapter and the Fort Worth chapter. I live in the north area of town. So really it's an even distribution as far as Dallas or Fort Worth. Fort Worth at the time was a smaller chapter. And so I thought, okay, well, I could, go a little bit further with my efforts and not get lost in a big chapter. So I got involved in the Fort Worth chat side, joined, I think I was membership chair first, and then communications, and then something else, and then eventually a president, and then went through the presidential suite. And now we have since dissolved Fort Worth and Dallas, and this is the first year for the North Texas chapter, which is super exciting. And I'm on the inaugural board for that, which is fantastic. And then I'm also the chair for Southern Regional Conference in New Orleans. So if you don't have your ticket, definitely get registered for that in January.
Excellent. Well, let me jump to the Southern Regional Conference for a moment since we're on the topic. Tell us a little bit about what people can expect this year. I know the announcement of speakers was just released. So what are you excited about for New Orleans?
Absolutely. Our theme this year, Bonnie, my co-chair, and I, when we were in New Orleans, it just has a vibe all to itself. The culture, the food, the music, just all of it. So really coming out of the pandemic, we want people to maintain this crazy balance that we have all discovered between work and being able to do things like this on Zoom and all of that. So really the theme is find your vibe. What that means to us is bringing and keeping the things that we learned in the pandemic into what our future looks like. Now, there's not going to be a whole lot of pandemic talk. I think everybody is sick of that conversation. So really, it's just how do we move forward but not lose the lessons. So finding your vibe, and then we've got 3 tracks. So we've got the marketing tools, the Adobe suite, that kind of thing, and then your marketing strategies, planning that, and then business development. So definitely checking out the sessions. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, and then we're about to announce our our pre-conference workshops next week. So those will be out as well.
Excellent, excellent. And when you think about the community that is SMPS, what is it for you that really resonates? Why do you like it, and what do you find about SMPS that's maybe unique than other associations in the industry?
I have to say, I'm in a unique position of going from a member to now a consultant. So I've seen both sides of the SMPS world. When I was a marketing coordinator and in the trenches of proposals and deadlines and things like that, it was a great resource for me to find best practices, to be able to have a community and sometimes a support center, a support of like where I could air my grievances. Not many people understand what we do in our industry, what we do as marketers, especially when you try to explain it to people outside of our industry. So having like-minded people who get what you do is priceless when you're in the trenches. And then as I developed my career, becoming a thought leader, it was a community of people who I could really rally together and then provide insight to that appreciated what I had to bring to the table. And then when I had the unfortunate situation of not playing corporate politics very well and got let go unexpectedly, I immediately turned to my SMPS network and said, hey, does anybody need help with proposals or CRM or anything like that? And that was 9 days before Christmas in 2015. And it wasn't until May that my business coach was like, hey, are you going to start this business or what? And I was like, well, I just like helping people. And he's like, that's what consultants do. So once I did that, all of a sudden my SMPS community shifted to potential clients. And one piece of advice that I would give to any SMPS member is always nurture those relationships, because you have no idea what's going to come in your career or down your path. They could be colleagues now or, colleagues 10 years from now. You just have no idea. And always, if you're gonna volunteer or get involved, just know that your relation or your reputation is at stake, not just your firm's, but you as a person. So I've always kind of had that mentality. And anytime I volunteer, I treat it like it's a job that I want to show up best for. And that has paid off in the long term, because people know that I have follow through. I'm willing to do, what I commit to. And that has helped me now as a consultant. 15 years ago when I started my career, I had no idea that this was going to be my path. So that's kind of where that has led me.
And tell us a little bit about your consulting company. What are the dynamics that you help firms with, and ultimately what led you to your book?
Yes. My firm focuses on CRM and data management, specifically for the professional services. So a lot of our firms are in the AEC industry, but really looking at any data needs. Now, a lot of people think immediately, okay, I need a piece of software. But honestly, your data and all of that starts well before the technology gets involved. It's about your people and your processes and the things that you put in place to manage those, and then you go to market for your software. If you don't have that first foundation in place, I don't care what piece of software you get, it will fail, because software is not an easy button. It's not a cure-all. I wish it was at times, but you've got to have that other in place first. So we help firms go from no process, no understanding of where their data is, all the way through maintaining it and successfully implementing all their processes and up to technology and maintaining that.
Outstanding. And was the process of your consulting firm the source of the content and material for your book? How did that process come about?
Great question. So through my consulting, one of my clients had a marketer that they were like, hey, I think you would really get along with her. Would you want to do a presentation with her? So I said, okay. So we did an SMPS headquarters learning lab several years ago together. So I flew out to Florida to meet her, and some people, like, they get all hyped up by their coworkers. I'm like, is this chick really going to live up to this hype? And sure enough, she did. And we hit it off. We became best friends. Her name is Chaz Ross Monroe. And we're just data nerds and CRM nerds. And so we have always stayed in touch with one another. And she was looking for a passion project and had mentioned writing another book. She has a first book, Sink or Swim Faster, and it's a marketing onboarding tool for our industry. And so I said, well, what are you thinking about? And as her best friend, I'm a sounding board and, want to encourage her the best that I can. And she's like, well, kind of a CRM book. You want to write it with me? And I was like, I don't want to write a book. No, I have no interest in writing a book. So then I thought about it and I talked to my team about it. And so I came back a week later and I was like, listen, sister, if I write this book, we ain't just doing it like willy-nilly on the weekends. Like, here's the outline, here are the chapters. And she knew as soon as I, took the bait that I was going to be all in. So we did, as soon as I met with her, we already had the 11 chapters outlined. We were trying to do it on the weekends and nights and, in between our day jobs, but we're both moms with young kids, and that's really hard to try to fit in writing a book. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to fly out to Florida and we're going to lock ourselves in a hotel and we're going to write this book. And that's what we did.
Wow.
And so in January, we launched it, and it has been well received and very successful, which is awesome. The content is system agnostic. So it's everything to do with data and client relationship management. It's not about a specific piece of technology. And it focuses on the process that you need to put in place, how to support your people, and best practices, and highly recommend it.
Outstanding. I have had a chance to look through the book. I haven't read it from cover to cover yet, but I am excited to, because I had an opportunity to see you and Chaz present at the national conference this year. And the content that you spoke to was totally inspiring, because it reminded me what we can do internally at SagePresence as well. And I think it's true whether you have a small team or a large team, the importance of the data and the CRM experience is crucial to the success of any company. For people that want to get access to the book, where can they find the book, and are there additional resources on that website that they can get access to?
Absolutely. CRM or die, no spaces, no dashes, just crmordie.com will get you to where you need to go. We have sneak peeks of every chapter. All of the content that CKearney Consulting has put out this year is around the book. So we've actually done a free 30-minute webinar on every chapter of the book so far. We're in the 10th month of the year, so we're in the 10th chapter. That one was yesterday. And looking at what you get on the website, as soon as you purchase the book, there is extra information that you can download and get access to. And then we also do quarterly webinars that you can purchase and attend. And it takes 2 hours to go through the full content of the book and work through some of the workshops. You mentioned Amplify at SMPS's national conference, and that is like 3 pages out of the book. So an entire presentation for 3 pages, you can imagine how long it takes to get through all of the content. But we've been able to curate it into 2 hours and have some hands-on workshops and things like that so that you can go through your data roles. How do you put those into your firm? How do you do process mapping? What does that look like? We go through some examples and case studies. So definitely, we've got one more this year, and that's in November.
That's amazing. And what a great way to break the book down to give it into those bite-sized pieces. I imagine there are team members who get access to your book. They want to implement this in their firm. It can be a heavy lift at first to kind of change the culture and the mindset for some in the firm around how to best do this. I know in my conversations with other firms in the AEC space, it's sometimes bringing some new awareness to an environment where they just used to do it a certain way. So in your book, what's say maybe 3 of the key things that if someone's wanting to start today to get a better handle on their client relationship management, what would you recommend?
Great question. And I think I'm going to cheat and look at one of the articles that we have.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Use your resources.
Because I think the very first article that we put out about the book directly asked that, and I just don't want to misspeak or misrepresent. But really, I think it comes down to knowing the buy-in and how to speak directly to your leadership so that you can get that buy-in, because you don't need your C-suite to log in every day to a CRM system or to update an Excel spreadsheet. That's not really what you're after. What you're after is them holding your staff accountable and them using the data that you're producing to make data-driven decisions. I think our industry is really good at collecting a ton of data, but really not so good at using it and driving with the data that we're collecting. So making sure that you understand what your leaders are focused on and what their hot buttons is. One of the examples that we give in the book is that I was working with a CEO and we were just having a rough time getting the user adoption on the BD and the pre-construction side. And he kept talking about bonding capacity. And I was like, first of all, I don't even know what bonding capacity is, but I better figure it out because he talks about it every meeting. So come to find out, it's just something with insurance that you, as a general contractor, if you're taking on projects that have to be bonded, you have a certain capacity that you can't go over. So that means, what are your projects in progress? How much capacity are they taking up? And then you can't chase work that will take up more than the capacity that you have. So it's always this ongoing flux. Well, your projects in progress, that was in my CRM. And the projects that we're pursuing, that's in my CRM. So why can I not give my CEO what he's looking for? Now, is bonding capacity what I would have initiated very first? No. Have I ever done that since? No. However, for him, that was his hot button. That's what he needed. So the minute now it took me 6 months to get to this point, like, kid you not, a lot of work and effort. But once I got to the point that he had a button that he could click, that he could see real time what his bonding capacity is, from that moment on, I had his buy-in. And at the next meeting with our marketing and estimating team, somebody came in and was like, oh, I've got this lead. And he said, if it's not in the system, I don't want to hear about it. If I hear you out right now, I know you won't put it in. So, I mean, my jaw was on the table because I was shocked that he put his foot down, but I was so impressed because that means he gets it. He knows that in order for him to get the information that he needs to run the business, he's got to have everybody else do it, but he knows that he's got to hold them accountable to do it. So I think listening to your leaders is the first thing that I would suggest, because you don't want to come with your hot button issues because they don't care about them. Right. Now, you can get yours eventually, but you've got to have their attention and focus first. And then the second thing that I would say is, as marketers, sometimes we don't fully understand how the business works. And so looking at it from a data perspective and following your data is the best way to see the entirety of a company. So things like when we get a pursuit or a lead, what do we do with it? Who knows about it? Can everybody in the business bring somebody? Can the receptionist be at church on Sunday and
Mhm.
hear that her church is doing a fundraiser for a new sanctuary? Does that person even know that your firm does sanctuaries?
Right.
First of all, second of all, does she know what to do with that lead? Like, this is the email address that you send it to, or this is the person you give it to. So, looking at things like that and then following it all the way through. When the lead turns into a pursuit, what happens?
Yeah.
When the pursuit is won, hopefully, what happens? What happens to it in accounting? Does it
Mhm.
change names? How often does that happen in our industry? When the project is going through the stages, what are you asking your operations staff to enter? Are they entering it multiple times in all these stages? Once, as a marketer, you understand that, it is eye opening to the process. And then you can have sympathy for your users of what you're asking them to do and what you're asking them to engage with. So I think that having that big picture is critical. As far as the third one go, I say this all the time, but sometimes it doesn't sink in, is CRM and data, they're not a one-time project. It is a
Mhm.
lifestyle, it is a journey, there is no end destination. I see people get burnt out because they're like, "We just haven't reached our deadline." I'm like, "What deadline?"
Right.
If you're doing it right, this is something that's day in and day out. It's not like with your health, it's not like you get to a certain point and then you're like, okay, now I get to eat like crap and never work out again. That's going to deteriorate. Like, so data and your CRM are the exact same. You've got to be on it for the long term.
That's great advice, and it's a good reminder too. I just was in our CRM just the other day, repurposing and reanalyzing the data, reconfiguring numbers to get a better sense of who's actually active, which poses a question for me as you manage CRM and as you work with teams. How much is too much? What is the sweet spot in reality in the industry or for business development individuals? How many relationships are people managing simultaneously? Is there sort of a best practice or best number for the realities of what is good CRM versus just having a lot of people in your system?
Yes, like I said, I think we all collect things for collection's sake, and we've become data hoarders in a sense. So I'll answer this two different ways. The first direction I thought you were going with the question was like when you're in the system, is there too much in a sense of collection? Like, can you be asking for too many fields? Like, there are some systems that we would audit, and just the how to enter a contact, there's like 50 fields. I'm like, why? Why do
Right.
you need that many fields? So, doing an audit if you already have a system is critical so that you can see, like, okay, we asked for the assistant's name. We have 100 contacts and only one has that field populated. Let's move that to the notes field and turn it off because you don't want to burn out your users when they're looking at the screen. They can have screen fatigue and
Right.
then just give up and be like, I don't want to enter this information. So, as far as that goes, absolutely, you can have too much. I always say only collect what's needed, turn it off. And if someone complains about it, you can always turn it back on.
Sure.
So always err on the side of less in that capacity. Now, as far as like number of contacts and how many can one person manage, I think that's different for everybody. But I think it comes down to the process that you put in place. So if I have no process whatsoever, I feel like I can only manage as many clients are like screaming at me or happy or like have deadlines because that's what's driving that. But if I have a process in place to always maintain my quarterly contacts, like, okay, I have a goal that these contacts are always going to be touched every quarter. I mean, you could do that with 100 contacts over
Sure.
time. Absolutely. Now, if you ask me to just maintain relationships with 100 people, I'd be like, I can't do that. I don't have time for that. But if you put a process in place, then okay. Now, can you have systems that remind you and have a cadence and things like that? Absolutely, the technology is available to do that.
Mhm.
So I think it really comes back to that foundation of process first.
Excellent, excellent. And I know you talk about the process being important and the software is secondary, but for those who are watching and listening who maybe don't even know where to start for software, what are you seeing or say maybe the top 3 to 5 CRM softwares that the industry is using these days?
Such a good question and such a dangerous question for someone like me to answer. So I will say that technology is always changing. So I can answer this question today, and then, tomorrow
Fair
I
enough.
find out about another piece of technology. So I always like to caveat it with an asterisk of this is always time sensitive of when I'm answering this. As far as if you're evaluating or going out to market to look at what's available, I always suggest doing your homework internally first. You want to ask your internal staff a lot of questions, and you need to get down to a why statement. Why do we need a CRM? Now, you can leave it at a cursory level and say something like, we want a central database, Courtney, like that's what we're after. I would argue that that's not what you're after. You're trying to solve a problem, and what problem is that? Is that access to data because you are constantly looking in more than one place? Well, access means a lot of things to a lot of people. Does access mean I have to be able to do it here? Does access mean I need to be able to do it on a tablet on a job site? Does access just mean I only go to one place and I have one login and I get to everything? What does that mean to you and to all the users that you expect to use it? So asking those questions is really important. So getting down to why do you need it and digging deeper than just a surface cursory answer. And then why do you need it now? Why do you need it today? Did something just blow up in your face and you don't ever want that to happen? One of the firms who hired me, they had the unfortunate situation of two offices submitted two different proposals to the same client.
Oh boy.
And the fees were different. So the CEO got a call like, do I like pick the lowest bidder amongst yourselves? Like, how does that work? So that can never happen. So they wanted a CRM to have transparent communication for their pursuits.
Sure.
That's a very specific, painful situation that says, why now? Why today? The reason that you want to ask these questions and get to it is because that's going to drive the process of getting through the evaluation. It's a long and tedious process to evaluate technology, look at the reviews, talk to users, and that can drag on. But if you remember the why and the why now, it can keep that sense of urgency throughout that entire process. And then once you have those answers and you go out to market, looking at things like G2, so that you can look at what people are saying about the technology is really important. The ones that are obviously the big hitters right now, Deltek and Uninet, which was formerly Cocentral. Cocentral was acquired by Uninet, so it's Uninet CRM by Cocentral now. Those two have always been the big hitters because they're industry specific. They are built for our industry. They understand our industry. Now, we've got Salesforce that is trying to get into our space more and more. They historically have failed because they are very product driven. So their system and processes kind of stop at the point of sale and don't continue on past the project data. And that's the part that we care about as marketers, right? Like I want to know the scope of my project and the start and the end date and things like that. Salesforce is doing a better job, especially now that there's consultants on the team or on the scene who have worked with AEC firms. It just takes a lot of customization. So if you're going to go the Salesforce route, you have to know that there's going to be customization that you're going to have to keep up with. Now, there are people that are coming onto the scene that are younger, more agile companies like Project Mark, who's doing automation for proposals. There's Builder, who is building out their CRM. There's people that are on the other side of the pond that are coming over to the US now. So like KMS and there was another one that I'm trying to look at my cheat sheet over here.
Sure.
Pipeliner CRM. Some of these are outside or industry adjacent to what we do. CMAP is another one. And I'm not sure if I said it, follow-up CRM, Top Builder. These are all ones that hit my evaluation right off the bat. Yeah. We also have AEC 360, who's been around a while, which is the Microsoft product. And then consultants like HSO that work with the AEC 360 product. So these are all ones that always I start with to kind of see if they match. But again, starting internally so that you don't get bamboozled by what the product is offering you and you drive off the car lot with like crazy things that you're like, I didn't need a self-driving car.
Right.
Like, I drive my kids to school every day. Like,
Yeah.
what am I doing? But really, you're driving the sales process because you've done your homework and you know what you need and why you need it now.
You are a wealth of knowledge and information. It's so inspiring and exciting, and it triggers for me a desire to want to learn more, to jump onto your site. So we learned where we can find your book, but where can people find you? What's your website? How do they find you if they want to work with you as a consultant?
Great question. So CKearneyConsulting.com is our homepage and all of the information. We have a ton of free resources out there for all the way from webinars that you can watch to articles that you can read. We do CRM chats on the third Thursday of every month. So those are just free discussions about everything CRM and data related. And then free webinars on the second Tuesday of the month. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and kind of social media stuff and follow us.
Excellent. I have two more questions. First, is there another book in you? Has this experience over the last year incubated some new ideas, new thoughts? Is there a second edition, or is there an expansion?
Have you been talking to Chaz? I'm not willing to say yes yet. However, it was a great experience and one that is worth repeating. I think we have to play with what that looks like.
Sure.
One of the things that we really struggled with is, like you said, we have such a wealth of knowledge that we want to share with people that we had to stay high level. So maybe digging deeper into some of the content of this one.
Sure.
Could be out there, or more like workbook style. We've also toyed with the idea of doing some online courses and online content. So I don't know what it holds. The answer is something. It's just a matter of what it looks like.
Outstanding. I know it's always an evolving process. Like you said, there's no end game. It's a constant evolution, as it will continue to be for your books as well. Now, my last question for you is, I loved interviewing you today because of your personality, your energy, your light, but also because of your amazingly cool background. So I'm curious to know, I see a lot of belts hanging on the wall, and I see a lot of medals as well. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience and what I am assuming is martial arts?
Yes. So right before the pandemic, my youngest daughter was in kindergarten, and there was a person that came to the school that did the board breaking, where he held the boards, and that he asked the PE coach to pick out one student, and my kid was the lucky winner that got to come up. And she's very shy, very reserved kiddo, and has struggled with speech and has been in speech since she was 2 years old. So for her to get picked up, she was like, oh, this is a scary moment for me. So I think adrenaline allowed her to do it, but she broke the board, and it was like life-changing for her. So she asked if she could go check out the school. And I was like, okay, like, you're interested in something that's, kind of more extroverted. I'm down for that. So she tried it out and enrolled, and then my oldest daughter enrolled, and then the pandemic hit, and the Taekwondo school was really trying to keep the parents engaged, and he was doing it over Zoom, and we had to clear out our living room to make space for them to do all the things. And the best part was we got to roll up socks and chunk them at them, and they had to like defend themselves against the socks. And I was like, man, this is great aggression for a parent. Like, this is amazing. But he offered those parents that stayed during the pandemic and when we had to shut down the school a free spot for life. I don't know how to say that well, but so I looked at my husband. I was like, how can we not? Like, it's free at this point, so it's just about like commitment and time. So he and I committed to do it. He had done karate as a kid, so I feel like I was like up against a challenge because he knew martial arts and I knew nothing about it. So we started as white belts, and we were like, we'll give it a try. And it was fun to be together as a family and do something. And at that point there was a family class, and so we all did it together. As we advanced, we couldn't do it as a family anymore just because of sparring and things like that. So I'm one belt away from my black belt. So I've been working on meeting that goal. And then these are just from tournaments and competitions and board breaking and sparring, and doing your form is the art part of the martial arts. So you compete in those 3 areas.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's a great exercise. As someone who used to do martial arts myself when I was in junior high, it's been a while, needless to say, but I did find the practice to be valuable, and there are still some skills that I can use today if necessary. Not that I'm out there looking for that, but the foundational work and the centering
Oh, yeah.
is very valuable. Well, it's been an extraordinary conversation today, and I am so grateful, Courtney, for your time, for your insight, for your knowledge. One more time, let people know where they can find you on the web for your consulting as well as for your book.
Absolutely. CKearneyConsulting.com and crmordie.com. And one thing I didn't say about the book, a lot of people ask about the title and how extreme it is, but really the core of that is the idea of your business will die without nurtured and managed client relationships. I think sometimes we forget what CRM stands for. So really remembering that it's about managing relationships with your clients, because without our clients, our businesses die. So just making sure that you understand that it's not just like a, publicity hype of CRM or die. It really is, you've got to nurture those or your business will fold.
Wonderful. And if people want to see you live, the next opportunity is either in North Texas chapter or in New Orleans for the upcoming Southern Region Conference. What are the dates again for that conference?
Yes, January 18th through the 20th of, yes, I got it right, 18th through the 20th of 2023. And then I will actually be at Pacific Regional, so 2 weeks after that. So February 1st through the 3rd in San Diego. And then I'm working with the Boston chapter to be in Boston in November. So we'll see if we can pull that off, but very excited about both of those opportunities.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I will see you at PRC as well. SagePresence will be there for a presentation. And until then, be well, keep up on the martial arts, and making a big difference for the community as a whole. So thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.